My mother left me with her and said it wouldn't hurt. The little girl told the millionaire. Then he discovers something shocking. Comment telling me what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and comment from which city you're watching me. I really want to know if you liked my story and I want to get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The suffocating March heat on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, clung to Arthur Vance's dress shirt like a second skin. At 52, the timber industry tycoon had built an empire that stretched across thousands of acres. But on that Tuesday afternoon, all he wanted was to get home and forget the disastrous meeting he had just faced at the Environmental Protection Agency office. The bureaucrats had once again questioned his environmental licenses, threatening to halt 3 of his main projects. Arthur gripped the steering wheel of his black Ford Ranger pickup, feeling the familiar pang of irritation rise in his throat. 10 years building his company with blood and sweat, and he still had to put up with public officials who had never set foot in a sawmill questioning his methods. The traffic on Interstate 40 was impossible. A tractor-trailer had overturned a few miles ahead, creating a gridlock that stretched for more than 5 miles. Arthur glanced at the dashboard clock, 4:30 p.m. At this rate, he wouldn't get home until after 8. That's when he remembered the old logging road that cut through St. James Farm. It was a shortcut he had known since he was young, when he still helped his father in his first attempts at the timber business. The road wasn't paved, but it would save him at least an hour of travel. Without hesitation, Arthur exited the main highway and followed the dirt track. The landscape changed rapidly. Urban constructions gave way to extensive pastures and dense forests. The smell of pine and damp earth invaded the cabin when he slightly opened the windows. It was an aroma that always soothed him, reminding him of the times when Eleanor, his late wife, insisted on accompanying him on his trips through the countryside. She loved to photograph the local fauna, especially the birds that abounded in the region. Eleanor had been gone for 10 years, the victim of a car accident on a rainy night. Since then, Arthur had buried himself in work, turning his grief into fuel to expand his business. The large house at the Orchid Estate, where he had lived the best years of his life with his wife, was now managed by Beatrice, Eleanor's younger sister, who had moved in after her sister's passing. The sun was beginning to dip towards the horizon when Arthur spotted a cloud of dust ahead. A dark car, which looked like an old sedan, was coming towards him at high speed. It was strange to encounter another vehicle on this practically abandoned road, especially one driving so recklessly. Arthur slowed down and pulled over to the edge of the road, giving way to the other vehicle. The sedan shot past like a bullet, kicking up a curtain of red dust that temporarily obscured his vision. Through the cloud of dirt, he briefly glimpsed the driver, a woman with dark hair, sunglasses, appearing to be about 30. She seemed desperate, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Something was wrong. Arthur stopped the truck and looked in the rearview mirror, watching the sedan disappear around a distant curve. A strange instinct, one he hadn't felt in years, told him he should investigate. Maybe it was just curiosity, or maybe the feeling that someone needed help. He decided to continue down the road, but now more slowly, carefully observing the sides of the path. That's when he saw something that made his heart almost stop. About 200 yards ahead, near a small creek that ran parallel to the road, there was an orange-tinged shape among the vegetation. Arthur stopped the car and got out, feeling his heart race. As he approached, the shape took form. It was a panther, majestic and imposing, lying in the shade of a leafy tree. The animal raised its head when it heard him approach, but showed no aggression. On the contrary, it seemed strangely calm. That's when he saw the child. A small girl who looked no older than 4 was lying next to the panther, wearing a faded blue dress and pink plastic sandals. Her brown hair was disheveled, and she seemed to be sleeping soundly. The panther kept one of its front paws extended over the child in a gesture that seemed protective. Arthur froze. In 30 years of traveling the rural roads of North Carolina, he had never witnessed anything so surreal. Panthers were wild animals, predators feared even by the most experienced hunters. To see one protecting a human child defied all logic. Cautiously, he took a few more steps toward the strange pair. The panther watched him with serene golden eyes, but did not move. It was as if it understood that he posed no threat. Arthur could then get a better look at the animal. It was an adult female, well-nourished, with a shiny, healthy coat. It was definitely not an escaped captive animal. The girl stirred slightly and opened her eyes. They were large and brown, with a spark of intelligence that contrasted with her tender age. She looked at Arthur without fear, only with a natural, childlike curiosity. "Hi," she said in a sweet, soft voice. "Did you come to get my mommy?" Arthur felt a lump in his throat. "Your mommy. Where is your mommy, little one?" The girl sat up slowly, and the panther adjusted its position to stay close to her. "She left in the black car. She said she was coming back, but that I had to stay with Luna until she got here." Luna? Arthur looked at the panther, which was now watching him with what seemed to be an almost friendly expression. "She's my friend," the child explained, running her small hand over the feline's golden fur. "My mommy said Luna would take care of me, and that it wouldn't hurt." The girl's words echoed in Arthur's mind like an alarm. A 4-year-old child should not be alone on a deserted road, much less under the protection of a wild panther, and that dark car that had passed him minutes before. Could it be the child's mother fleeing? "What's your name?" he asked, crouching at a respectful distance from the panther. "Chloe," she replied, smiling. "And you?" "Arthur." "Chloe, are you hurt? Are you in any pain?" "No, mister. Luna is very careful. She always takes care of me." That answer sent a chill down Arthur's spine. Always? What kind of life had this child had to consider it normal to be cared for by a wild predator? The sun was setting quickly, and the temperature was beginning to drop. Arthur knew he couldn't leave the girl there, but he also had no idea how to separate a 4-year-old from a panther that clearly considered her under its protection. Chloe seemed to sense his hesitation. "Luna doesn't hurt good people," she said with the seriousness of someone much older. "She knows who has a bad heart and who has a good heart. Yours is good." At that moment, observing that small, vulnerable child next to one of the continent's most dangerous predators, Arthur Vance made a decision that would change his life forever. He didn't know what was happening there, nor how such an impossible situation had formed. But one thing was clear. He couldn't just walk away and leave Chloe alone on the road, regardless of the mysterious circumstances that had brought her there. Arthur remained crouched for long minutes, trying to process the impossible situation before his eyes. Twilight was advancing rapidly over the rural road, painting the sky in shades of orange that mixed with the growing shadows of the woods. Chloe remained seated next to Luna, the panther, with a naturalness that defied any rational explanation. "Chloe, are you hungry? Thirsty?" Arthur asked, keeping his voice calm despite the tension he felt. "A little," the girl admitted, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. "But Luna always finds water in the little creek over there." Arthur looked in the direction she pointed and saw the small stream meandering through the trees. The situation was becoming increasingly surreal. How had a 4-year-old child survived in this wild environment? And for how long? "Chloe, can you tell me where you live? Who do you live with?" The girl tilted her head, thoughtful. "I used to live in a big house with lots of animals. There were monkeys, toucans, a tapir named Goldie, and lots of panthers. Luna was my favorite. A big house with animals?" Arthur frowned. "Do you remember the name of the place? Or other people who lived there?" "There was Aunt Rose. who took care of the sick animals, and Uncle Charles, who brought food. But they left a long time ago. Chloe's answers only deepened the mystery. Arthur tried to remember if he knew of any sanctuary or zoo in the region, but nothing came to mind, and even if such a place existed, how had such a young child established such a connection with a wild predator? Luna stood up slowly, stretching like a gigantic house cat. The panther walked to the creek, drank water for a few minutes, and returned, lying down again next to Chloe. The girl smiled and stroked the feline's muzzle. "She's worried because it's getting dark," Chloe explained. "Luna doesn't like it when it's dark and I'm far from home." "And where is your home now?" Arthur insisted. Chloe's face saddened. "My mommy said the house with the animals doesn't exist anymore. That's why she brought me here and asked Luna to take care of me until someone with a good heart showed up." The child's explanation made Arthur shiver. What kind of mother would abandon her 4-year-old daughter on a deserted road, even if under the protection of an animal? And how did this woman know the panther's habits to the point of entrusting her child's life to it? The sound of an approaching engine made Arthur turn around quickly. A white pickup truck was coming up the road towards him, kicking up red dust. It was Jacob, the caretaker of St. James Farm, who was probably returning from some task in the fields. Jacob stopped the vehicle at a safe distance when he saw the unusual scene. Arthur stood up and walked towards him, leaving Chloe and Luna near the creek. "Mr. Vance, what are you doing here with that animal?" Jacob asked, getting out of the truck cautiously. "It's a long story, Jacob. Have you ever seen anything like this around here? Tame panthers?" "Tame?" Jacob laughed nervously. "Mr. Vance, a panther doesn't become a pet. That animal must be sick or worse. And that child, where did she come from?" "I found them both here. The girl says the panther is her friend." Jacob shook his head, incredulous. "That's not normal, Mr. Vance. A panther kills on instinct. If it hasn't attacked yet, it's because it's preparing to pounce." Arthur looked back and saw Chloe talking softly to Luna, as if she were telling the panther a story. The animal listened attentively, moving its ears in the direction of the child's voice. "It doesn't look like she's going to attack," Arthur murmured. "You should get out of there quickly and call the Fish and Wildlife Service. This situation isn't right." "And the child?" "We'll take the child, but leaving her near that beast is suicide." Arthur knew Jacob was logically right, but something in his gut told him that separating Chloe from Luna abruptly could be traumatic for the girl. Besides, how would he explain to the authorities that he had found an abandoned child being protected by a wild panther? "Jacob, can you go on ahead and not mention this to anyone for now? I need to handle this situation carefully." The caretaker hesitated. "Mr. Vance, this could cause serious trouble. If something happens, I'll take responsibility. I just need a few hours to better understand what's happening." Jacob grumbled something incomprehensible but agreed to continue on his way. After the truck disappeared around the bend, Arthur returned to Chloe. The girl had fallen asleep again, leaning against Luna's warm flank. The panther remained alert, its golden eyes watching Arthur's every move. It was as if the animal were assessing whether he posed a threat to its charge. "Luna," Arthur said softly, feeling ridiculous for talking to a panther. "I need to take Chloe to a safe place. Do you understand that?" The panther tilted its head slightly, as if it were actually listening. It was impossible to know if the animal understood his words, but there was something almost human in its golden eyes. Arthur approached slowly, extending his hand toward Chloe. Luna let out a low, almost imperceptible growl, but didn't move. It was a warning, not a threat. "Chloe," he called gently, "I need to take you to my house. It's getting cold out here." The girl opened her eyes and smiled. "Can Luna come too?" The simple question created a complex dilemma. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that wild panthers can't live in houses? And more importantly, how do you separate two creatures that clearly considered each other family? Chloe, Luna is a wild animal. She needs to live in the forest, not in a house with people. The girl's eyes filled with tears. But she's my friend. She'll be all alone. She won't be alone. There are other panthers in the forest. Luna will find her family. Chloe clung to Luna's neck, sobbing softly. The panther gently licked the child's face, like a mother comforting her cub. The scene broke Arthur's heart. What if I promise you can visit Luna? We can come here other times. The girl lifted her tear-stained face. Do you really promise? I promise. Chloe talked softly with Luna for a few minutes, in a language that mixed English words with sounds that imitated the noises the panther made. It was as if the two had developed their own form of communication. Finally, Chloe moved away from the panther and walked towards Arthur. She said she'll wait for me here, but only if you're a really good person. I will take very good care of you. Arthur promised, taking the girl's small, warm hand. Luna stood up and walked a few steps towards the woods, stopping to look one last time at Chloe. The panther emitted a low, guttural sound that sounded like a farewell. Then it disappeared silently among the trees. During the drive to the orchid estate, Chloe remained silent in the passenger seat of the truck, looking out the window with a sadness that seemed too big for such a small child. Arthur tried to start a conversation a few times, but she only responded with monosyllables. Arthur's property was 15 miles from the city, in a preserved rural area where he had built a large house surrounded by gardens that Eleanor had lovingly designed. When they arrived, the porch lights were already on, and Beatrice appeared at the main door. Beatrice Moore was 45 and had dedicated the last 10 years of her life to managing Arthur's house and smaller businesses after her sister's loss. She was a practical woman with a strong personality who had always made it clear that she considered Arthur more a brother than a brother-in-law. But when she saw the tycoon getting out of the truck with an unknown child in his arms, her expression changed completely. Arthur? Who is this child? It's a long story, Beatrice. Her name is Chloe, and she'll be staying with us for a while. Staying with us? What do you mean? Beatrice came down the porch steps, examining the girl with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Where did she come from? I found her on the road. It seems she was abandoned. Abandoned. Beatrice's voice went up an octave. Arthur, you can't just bring an abandoned child home. This has to be reported to the authorities. I know, but first I need to understand the situation better. Beatrice watched Chloe, who was hiding behind Arthur's legs. The girl was dirty, with disheveled hair and wrinkled clothes, but her large, intelligent eyes were captivating. Does she have a family? Is anyone looking for her? I don't know yet. For now, she stays here. The firmness in Arthur's voice surprised Beatrice. In the 10 years she had been taking care of the house, she had never seen him show any interest in children. On the contrary, he had always avoided any situation that reminded him of the family he never had with Eleanor. Arthur, are you sure about what you're doing? This responsibility? I'm sure, he interrupted, picking Chloe up in his arms. Now let's give her a bath and get her something to eat. We'll talk about the rest later. As they went up the stairs towards the bedrooms, Beatrice watched the scene with a troubled expression. Something had changed in Arthur that day, and she felt that this change represented a threat to the orderly life they had built over the past few years. Chloe's first bath at Arthur's house revealed much more than just the dirt from the road. Beatrice, who had insisted on helping with the child despite her initial distrust, discovered small scars on the girl's legs and arms, marks that looked like old scratches from branches and thorns. Arthur, come see this, Beatrice called from the guest room bathroom. He found the two women in his life, one he had just met, and the other who had been caring for him for a decade, examining the marks on Chloe's fair skin. The girl showed no discomfort, On the contrary, she seemed used to having these scars inspected. "They don't hurt," Chloe said simply. "It's from when I played in the forest with Luna and the other animals." "Other animals?" Beatrice asked, exchanging a worried look with Arthur. "There were many. Small monkeys that liked to climb in my hair, toucans that ate fruit from my hand, and a big tapir that let me ride her." Beatrice finished drying the girl with a fluffy towel that had belonged to Eleanor. "Chloe, how long did you live in this place with the animals?" The child frowned, concentrating. "I don't know how to count well, but it was since I was very little. Aunt Rose said I arrived there as a baby. And do you remember how you got there?" "No. But Aunt Rose used to say that a pretty lady brought me on a rainy night and said they should take care of me until she came back. But she never came back." Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. Chloe's story echoed his own experience of emotional abandonment after Eleanor's loss. But unlike him, who had buried himself in work, the girl had found an unlikely family among wild animals. "Chloe," he said softly, "do you know the name of the lady who took you there?" "Aunt Rose called her Anna. She said she cried a lot when she left me, but that she had no choice." Beatrice dressed Chloe in a nightgown that had belonged to a distant, now-adult niece. The garment was too big, but it would do until they could get proper clothes. Throughout the process, the girl remained docile and cooperative, as if she were accustomed to basic care. "Where did you learn to behave so well?" Beatrice asked, surprised by the child's maturity. "Aunt Rose taught me. She said that polite girls always find good people to take care of them." After Chloe fell asleep in the guest room, clutching a teddy bear that Beatrice had found in a forgotten drawer, the two adults gathered in the living room. The house, usually silent after dinner, felt different with the presence of the sleeping child upstairs. "Arthur, we need to talk seriously," Beatrice said, pouring strong coffee into 2 cups. "This situation can't go on like this." "What do you mean?" "You brought an abandoned child home without notifying the proper authorities. If anyone finds out, it could lead to serious legal problems." Arthur drank his coffee slowly, thinking about his sister-in-law's words. "And what do you suggest? That I take her to a shelter tomorrow morning?" "That's the correct procedure. Let the responsible agencies handle the case. Beatrice, you saw what she's like. Chloe is not an ordinary child. She spent years living in a wild environment, creating bonds with animals that most people wouldn't dare to get near. If she goes to a shelter, they'll treat her like a freak." Beatrice sighed, acknowledging his concern. "But have you thought about the responsibility you're taking on? Raising a child is not like running a company, Arthur, especially a child with her history." "I know I don't know anything about children," he admitted, "but I also know how to recognize when someone needs help, and for some reason, fate put this girl in my path." "Fate?" Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you believe in fate?" "Since I found a 4-year-old child being protected by a panther on a deserted road." Beatrice was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. "A panther? You didn't mention that before." "Because I knew you wouldn't believe me. And I'm supposed to believe a story like that? If you had seen it with your own eyes, you would believe it. That panther protected Chloe as if she were its own cub, and the girl talked to it as if it were the most natural thing in the world." Beatrice shook her head, incredulous. "That's not possible, Arthur. Panthers are wild predators." "I thought it wasn't possible either, until today." The next morning, Chloe woke up before everyone else and was found by Beatrice in the back garden, watching the birds that visited the feeder Eleanor had installed years ago. The girl was barefoot, still wearing the large nightgown, completely absorbed in observing the birds. "Good morning, Chloe. Did you sleep well?" "Good morning, Aunt Beatrice. The birds here are different from the ones in the forest. They're not afraid of people. That's because they're used to getting food every day. My sister, who was Uncle Arthur's wife, loved to feed the birds." "Did she go away too?" Chloe's simple question touched a sensitive spot. She passed away a long time ago, but she left a lot of good things here in the house. Like me, like you. My mommy went away too, but she left me here for Uncle Arthur to take care of. Luna explained to me that sometimes mothers do that when they love their children very much. Beatrice felt a shiver. The way Chloe interpreted her abandonment was both touching and disturbing. The child had turned a tragedy into something positive, using the unlikely wisdom she had acquired from living with animals. Chloe, do you miss your old life? A little, especially Luna and Aunt Rose, but Uncle Arthur has nice eyes like Aunt Rose had. People with nice eyes don't hurt children. And how did you learn that? Luna taught me. She always knew which person was good and which was bad just by looking in their eyes. During breakfast, Arthur watched, fascinated, as Chloe interacted with the domestic environment. She ate slowly, chewing well, and thanked him for everything she received. When he offered her orange juice, she smelled it first, like an animal testing if the food was safe. Chloe, have you had orange juice before? No. In the forest, we drank water from the creek and sometimes juice from fruits that Uncle Charles brought. Who was Uncle Charles? A big man who came in a truck to bring food for the animals. He was nice, but he didn't stay long. He said he had to take care of other places too. Arthur exchanged a significant look with Beatrice. Chloe's story was becoming more complex with each revelation. Was there really a clandestine animal sanctuary in the region? And if there was, what had happened to it? Chloe, do you remember when this place with the animals ended? The girl stopped drinking her juice, her large eyes filling with sadness. It was on a very noisy night. Many cars came with flashing lights and men shouting. Aunt Rose was crying and said everything was going to go wrong. And then, the men took almost all the animals in big trucks. Luna hid in the forest with me. Aunt Rose said she would try to save the others, but then she disappeared too, and you were left alone with Luna for many days. We ate fruits and drank water from the creek. Then a lady showed up who said she was my mother and that she was going to take me to a safe place. Chloe's story was revealing a traumatic past that explained her unusual connection with wild animals. She had lost not just one, but two families. First her biological one, then the unlikely family of caretakers and animals at the sanctuary. Chloe, Arthur said gently, would you like to stay here with us? At least until we find out more about your story. The girl's eyes lit up. Can I really? And can I visit Luna? Of course you can. Beatrice watched the interaction with growing concern. Arthur was getting attached to the child quickly, and she feared the consequences of this hasty bond. Besides, there was something in Chloe's story that didn't quite fit. How had such a young child survived the shutdown of a clandestine sanctuary? And who really was the woman who had abandoned her on the road? But Beatrice's deepest concern was personal. For 10 years, she had been the only constant female presence in Arthur's life. She had taken care of the house, managed his social commitments, and become indispensable to his routine. Chloe's arrival represented a change she was not prepared to accept. That afternoon, while Arthur worked in his office and Chloe played in the garden under Beatrice's supervision, the phone rang. It was Dr. August Fields, a veterinarian and longtime friend of Arthur's, who had heard rumors about the situation through Jacob, the caretaker. Arthur, I need to talk to you about this story of the child and the panther, Dr. Fields said without preamble. Jacob told me you found a girl being protected by a panther. It's true, August. I know it sounds impossible, but it happened. My friend, this reminds me of a situation we investigated a few years ago. There were rumors about an unregistered sanctuary operating in the region, where injured animals were treated without an official license. Arthur felt his heart race. Do you know what happened to that place? It was shut down by the Fish and Wildlife Service about 6 months ago. The people in charge disappeared before the raid, but they left several animals behind. Most were relocated to licensed zoos and sanctuaries, and the people who ran the place never found. But Arthur, if this child really came from there, you could be in danger. There are groups that don't like it when their schemes are discovered. The call ended with Arthur more worried than before. Chloe's story wasn't just about abandonment and survival. There were more complex and potentially dangerous layers involved. Dr. Field's revelation about the sanctuary shut down by the FWS left Arthur on high alert. Throughout that night, he stayed awake in his office, searching the internet for any information about environmental enforcement operations in the region in recent months. What he found disturbed him deeply. There were sparse news reports about the closure of an unlicensed rehabilitation center in the rural area near Asheville, but the details were vague. The authorities mentioned serious irregularities and suspicious activities, but did not specify what kind of operation was being conducted at the site. Even more worrying was the mention of missing persons related to the case. The next morning, Arthur was awakened by screams coming from the garden. He ran outside and found Beatrice trying to calm Chloe, who was crying desperately, pointing towards the woods that surrounded the property. "What happened?" he asked, picking the girl up in his arms. "She says she saw the panther at the edge of the forest," Beatrice explained, clearly nervous. "But I didn't see anything. Luna is there," Chloe sobbed, pointing to a denser area of the woods. "She's calling for me." Arthur looked in the indicated direction, but could see nothing but the green shadows of the forest. However, he knew the local fauna well and knew that panthers had extensive territories. It was possible that Luna was following Chloe, staying close to her human charge. "Beatrice, take Chloe inside the house," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "No!" the girl shouted, struggling in Beatrice's arms. "I want to see Luna. She might be hurt." "Chloe, panthers are wild animals. Even if Luna is your friend, she could be dangerous to other people. She doesn't hurt anyone who isn't bad," the child insisted, her tears wetting Beatrice's shirt. Arthur made a decision he knew was risky. "Beatrice, take Chloe to the living room. I'm going to check the woods." "Arthur, that's crazy. If there really is a panther out there, if she's following Chloe, I need to know. We can't live with this uncertainty." Arthur took a shotgun from the locked cabinet in his office, a weapon he hadn't used in years but kept for emergencies. He walked cautiously towards the woods, all his senses on high alert. The forest was too quiet. Not even the birds were singing, a classic sign of a large predator in the area. Arthur advanced slowly among the trees, following a hunting trail he had known since his youth. That's when he saw her. Luna was lying under a leafy tree, watching him with her golden eyes. The panther showed no aggression, but her presence there confirmed Arthur's fears. The animal had followed Chloe to the property and had now established a territory nearby. Man and panther observed each other for long minutes, in a silent communication that transcended any language. Arthur could feel the intelligence behind those feline eyes, a wild wisdom that judged his intentions. "She's safe," he said softly, knowing he sounded ridiculous talking to a wild predator. "I'm going to take good care of her." Luna stood up slowly and walked a few steps towards Arthur. For a terrifying moment, he thought the panther was going to attack. But the animal stopped just 10 feet away and emitted a low sound, almost like a whimper. It was a sound of farewell. The panther turned and disappeared silently into the dense forest, leaving Arthur alone with his heart pounding and a new understanding of the extraordinary connection between Chloe and the wild world. When he returned to the house, he found a situation that worried him even more. Beatrice was on the phone, speaking in a low voice to someone, while Chloe played distractedly on the living room rug. "Who were you talking to?" he asked after Beatrice hung up. "With Dr. Fields. I told him about the panther showing up on the property. He said he'll come tomorrow to assess the situation." Arthur felt a growing unease. "Why did you make that decision without consulting me?" "Because someone in this house needs to think rationally," Beatrice retorted, her irritation finally surfacing. "Arthur, You're behaving as if you're this child's father, but she just appeared in your life yesterday. And now we have a panther roaming our property. Luna won't hurt anyone, Chloe said from the floor, without looking up from the building blocks Beatrice had found in an old drawer. She just came to say goodbye to me. How do you know that? Arthur asked, crouching beside the girl. Because she told me. Panthers talk with their eyes and with their hearts. Luna said she's going back to the big forest, where she has other friends. Beatrice watched the conversation with an increasingly disturbed expression. The naturalness with which Chloe spoke about communicating with wild animals made her uncomfortable. There was something about that child that was not normal, something that threatened the order she had carefully built in Arthur's life. Chloe, Beatrice said, sitting in a nearby armchair, don't you miss the other people who took care of you? Aunt Rose. The girl's face saddened. I miss her a lot. Aunt Rose had white hair and smelled like herbal medicine. She taught me the names of the animals and sang to me before bed. And wouldn't you like to find her again? Chloe looked up, a timid hope shining in her eyes. Is she alive? Maybe. But for that, someone would have to look for her. Arthur realized the direction of the conversation and intervened. Beatrice, can we talk in the kitchen? The two moved away, leaving Chloe absorbed in her play. In the kitchen, out of the child's earshot, the ensuing argument revealed tensions that had been building for days. What are you trying to do? Arthur asked, his voice controlled but firm. Trying to make you see reality, Beatrice replied. This child has a biological family somewhere, people who might be looking for her. And what if those people were the ones who abandoned her in a sanctuary when she was a baby? You don't know that. You're assuming based on the story of a 4-year-old child. And you're assuming it would be better to hand her over to strangers than to leave her with someone who cares about her. Beatrice was silent for a moment, fighting emotions she preferred to keep buried. Arthur, you lost Eleanor 10 years ago. I know the pain never completely went away, but you can't try to fill that void with a child who appeared out of nowhere. The accusation hit Arthur like a punch. You think that's what I'm doing? I don't know. But I know you've changed since you brought this girl home, and you've changed in a way that worries me. What kind of change? You're getting attached too quickly to someone who might not stay, and when she leaves, because eventually she will, you're going to suffer again. Arthur looked through the kitchen window at the garden where Chloe had played earlier. He could see her small footprints in the damp earth, concrete proof that a new life had entered his orderly existence. Beatrice, can I ask you a question? During these 10 years, have you ever seen me truly happy? The question caught Beatrice by surprise. Happy? You always seemed content, satisfied with your life. Content isn't happy. Satisfied isn't happy. Since Eleanor left, I've just existed. I work, I eat, I sleep, and I repeat it all the next day. But since yesterday, for the first time in a decade, I feel like I have a purpose that goes beyond business. And what if you find out Chloe has a family that wants her back? Then I'll do what's best for her. But until that moment comes, I'm going to give her all the love and protection I can. That afternoon, Dr. Fields arrived at the property accompanied by a woman Arthur didn't know. She was a veterinarian specializing in wild fauna, about 35 years old, with brown hair tied in a ponytail and intelligent green eyes. Arthur, this is Dr. Morgana Shaw, Dr. Fields introduced. She's an expert in wild feline behavior and is coordinating the relocation project for the animals that were removed from the closed sanctuary. Her name caused an unexpected reaction in Arthur. Morgana had been his girlfriend in college, an intense relationship that ended when she decided to specialize in wildlife veterinary medicine, and he opted for business administration. They hadn't seen each other in over 15 years. Morgana, he said, trying to hide his surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. Me neither, she replied, equally surprised. Dr. Fields told me about the child's situation, but he didn't mention you were involved. The tension in the air was palpable. Beatrice watched the interaction with renewed interest, sensing a dynamic she hadn't expected. Chloe, who was playing nearby, looked up and fixed her gaze on Morgana. "You smell like Aunt Rose," the girl said suddenly, approaching the veterinarian. Morgana crouched down to be at Chloe's level. "That's because I work with a lot of animals, honey, like Aunt Rose worked. You knew Aunt Rose? Maybe. Tell me what she was like." As Chloe described Rose with surprising detail for a child her age, Morgana made mental notes. There was something familiar in the description, something that sparked a disturbing memory of a woman who had worked at the sanctuary closed by the FWS. The recognition in Morgana's eyes was immediate and unsettling. As Chloe described Aunt Rose with specific details, white hair tied back with a colorful scarf, hands that always smelled of medicinal herbs, a small crescent moon-shaped scar on her forehead, the veterinarian felt a chill run down her spine. "Chloe," Morgana said carefully, "did Aunt Rose wear a necklace with a leaf pendant?" The girl's eyes lit up. "Yes, it was a golden leaf that she said brought luck to the sick animals. You really did know her." Morgana exchanged a grave look with Dr. Fields before answering. "I think so, honey. Rose Carter worked at the place where I took care of the animals after you all left." Arthur stepped closer, sensing the tension in Morgana's voice. "Are you saying you know the person who took care of Chloe? Rose Carter was found by FWS agents during the sanctuary shutdown. She was in a severe state of dehydration and malnutrition, hidden in a cabin at the back of the property. When they found her, she kept repeating only one sentence: 'I have to find my girl. I have to find my girl.'" Beatrice approached the group, clearly alarmed. "And where is this woman now?" "Admitted to Asheville Regional Hospital. She developed severe pneumonia and, well, her mental state isn't the best. The doctors believe it was caused by the trauma of losing so many animals she considered family." Chloe tugged on Arthur's pants leg. "Uncle Arthur, can we visit Aunt Rose? She must miss me." The child's simple question created an uncomfortable silence among the adults. Each one processed the implications of the revelation. Chloe had someone who cared for her, someone who was alive and possibly looking for her. "Morgana," Arthur said, "can you take us to see her?" "I can try, but Rose is in a very fragile state. Since she was found, she speaks very little and refuses to see strangers. The doctors think she's lost hope of finding the child she was looking for." Dr. Fields intervened. "Arthur, we need to consider all aspects of this situation. If this woman is indeed Chloe's guardian, she has legal rights over the child." "What kind of rights?" Beatrice asked, her voice revealing a concern that went beyond Chloe's well-being. "Depending on the circumstances, she may have been designated as the child's legal guardian. Even if informally, if Rose cared for Chloe since she was a baby, that establishes complex legal ties." Arthur felt the world spinning around him. In just 3 days, he had grown deeply attached to Chloe, allowing her to fill a void in his life he didn't even know existed. The possibility of losing her to someone with a greater legal claim was devastating, but she abandoned the child, he argued. Rose wasn't present when Chloe was left on the road. "How do we know that?" Morgana questioned. "Chloe said a woman who introduced herself as her mother took her away. Rose could have been kidnapped, injured, or forced to separate from the child." Chloe listened to the adults' conversation with a worried expression that seemed inappropriate for her age. "You're talking as if I'm going to leave," she said, her small voice trembling. "Doesn't Uncle Arthur want to take care of me anymore?" The question broke Arthur's heart. He knelt in front of the girl, holding her small hands. "Chloe, I very much want to take care of you. But if Aunt Rose is alive and looking for you, maybe it's better for you to be together. What if I want to stay with you? Then we'll talk to Aunt Rose and see what's best for everyone." That evening, after Chloe had fallen asleep, Morgana stayed for dinner at Arthur's house. Her presence brought a strange dynamic to the environment. Beatrice was visibly uncomfortable with the veterinarian. While Arthur battled memories of a romantic past he preferred to keep buried. "Arthur," Morgana said, as they had coffee on the back terrace, "I need to tell you something about the sanctuary where Chloe lived." "What?" "It wasn't just an animal rehabilitation center. There was something else happening there, something we're still trying to understand." Beatrice, who had insisted on joining the conversation, leaned forward. "What kind of thing?" "Financial documents we found suggest the sanctuary received regular donations from an anonymous source. Significant amounts, deposited monthly for the past 5 years. Arthur frowned. Someone was funding the place secretly. Exactly. And the strangest part is that the deposit stopped abruptly about 6 months ago, shortly before the sanctuary was closed. Do you have any suspicion about who the donor was?" Morgana hesitated before answering. "The deposits were made through a business account. At first, we thought it was some company making donations to launder money or something. But when we investigated further..." "What did you discover?" "The account was registered in the name of a charitable foundation, the Eleanor Vance Foundation." The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. Beatrice was as pale as a ghost, her hands trembling slightly. "That's impossible," Arthur muttered. "Eleanor never mentioned any foundation." "Arthur," Morgana said gently, "did you know your wife kept separate bank accounts?" "Of course not. We shared everything." Beatrice cleared her throat nervously. "Actually, Arthur, Eleanor had some personal accounts she used for her philanthropic projects." Arthur turned to his sister-in-law, a growing sense of betrayal overwhelming him. "You knew about this? For all these years, you knew Eleanor was secretly funding an animal sanctuary. She asked me not to say anything. She said it was her personal project and that you wouldn't approve. Why wouldn't I approve of helping injured animals?" Beatrice avoided his gaze. "I don't know. She just said she preferred to keep it a secret." Morgana watched the tension grow between the in-laws with professional interest. As a veterinarian, she was used to reading body language. And there was something in Beatrice's posture that suggested she knew more than she was admitting. "Beatrice," she said calmly, "did you ever visit the sanctuary? Did you know Rose Carter personally?" "I was never there. Eleanor just showed me some pictures of the animals being treated." "What kind of pictures?" "Injured panthers, toucans with broken wings, orphaned cubs." It was beautiful work. Arthur stood up abruptly, walking to the edge of the terrace. His mind was working furiously, trying to fit the pieces of a puzzle that grew more complex with each revelation. "Morgana, you said the last deposits were made 6 months ago, but Eleanor passed away 10 years ago." "Yes. Someone continued making the deposits in her foundation's name after her death. Who had access to the account?" "According to the bank records, only 2 people, Eleanor Vance and Beatrice Moore." All eyes turned to Beatrice, who had turned even paler. Her hands were shaking visibly as she tried to form words. I can explain." "Then explain," Arthur said, his voice icy. "Eleanor left me a sum of money before she passed. She said it was to continue helping the animals after she was gone. I just fulfilled her wishes. For 10 years. You spent a fortune in secret for 10 years. It wasn't that much money. And I thought I was doing good." Morgana intervened before the argument escalated. "Beatrice, did you ever meet Chloe during your transactions with the sanctuary?" "I never saw the child before Arthur brought her home, but Rose must have mentioned she was caring for a little girl." Beatrice hesitated for a very long time before answering. "Maybe. She talked about many animals and other responsibilities." Beatrice's evasiveness did not go unnoticed by anyone. Arthur approached his sister-in-law, his expression serious. "Beatrice, did you know Chloe existed?" "Not exactly. What does that mean?" "Rose mentioned she was caring for an orphan child at the sanctuary. But I never imagined Arthur would find her." Beatrice's admission created an even more tense atmosphere. Arthur realized he had been kept in the dark about fundamental aspects of his own wife's life, and that his sister-in-law was complicit in this secret. "Morgana," he said finally, "tomorrow morning I want to visit Rose at the hospital. Chloe deserves to be reunited with the person who cared for her, and I deserve some answers. Arthur, are you sure? This reunion could change everything." "Everything has already changed," he replied, looking through the window of the room where Chloe slept peacefully. "The question now is to find out how far this web of secrets that surrounded my own family goes." The next morning dawned heavy with a tension that seemed to permeate every corner of the house. Arthur had spent the night awake, pacing his office and trying to process the revelations about Eleanor and Beatrice's secret involvement with the sanctuary. When he finally came down for breakfast, he found Chloe sitting alone at the table, eating cereal in silence. "Where's Aunt Beatrice?" he asked, noticing his sister-in-law's absence. "She left early, said she had to take care of some things in the city," Chloe replied, without looking up from her bowl. "Uncle Arthur, are you sad with me?" The girl's direct question caught him off guard. "Of course not, little one. Why would you think that? Because last night I heard you talking loudly," and Aunt Beatrice cried afterward. Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. In his 52 years, he had never had to explain adult conflicts to a child, especially a child who had lived through such unusual experiences. "Chloe, sometimes adults get confused about things that happened in the past. But that has nothing to do with you. Is it about Aunt Rose? Did you find out where she is?" "We did. And today we're going to visit her at the hospital." Chloe's eyes lit up for the first time that morning. "She'll be happy to see me." "I'm sure she will." 2 hours later, Arthur and Chloe arrived at Asheville Regional Hospital, accompanied by Morgana. The 3-story building was modest, but well-maintained, with corridors that smelled of disinfectant and walls painted a pale green that tried to be comforting. "Rose is on the 3rd floor, in the psychiatric wing," Morgana explained as they went up in the elevator. "The doctor said she has moments of lucidity interspersed with periods of confusion. Since she arrived, she mostly talks about animals and a child she needs to find." "How will we know if she's in a lucid moment?" Arthur asked. "Dr. Carter, the psychiatrist in charge of her case, will guide us. He's waiting for us." On the 3rd floor, they were greeted by a tall, thin man with graying hair and kind eyes. Dr. Marcus Carter appeared to be about 60 and spoke with the patience of someone used to dealing with complex cases. "Mr. Vance." Rose had a particularly difficult night. She woke up several times, screaming the name Chloe and saying she needed to protect her from the bad men. "But this morning she is calmer." "Bad men?" Arthur repeated, concerned. "In her ramblings, Rose always mentions men who came to take the animals away by force. We believe she's referring to the FWS operation that closed the sanctuary. But to her, traumatized as she is, they are just bad men who destroyed her family." Chloe tugged on Arthur's sleeve. "Can I talk to her now?" Dr. Carter crouched to be at the girl's level. "Chloe, Aunt Rose is very sick. She might not remember everything, or she might get very emotional seeing you. You need to be prepared for that. I've taken care of sick animals since I was little. I know how to be gentle." The child replied with a seriousness that impressed the doctor. Rose's room was at the end of the hall, in a quiet wing where only the sound of medical monitors broke the stillness. When they opened the door, Arthur saw a woman of about 60, with sparse white hair, sitting in a chair near the window, staring intently at the hospital garden. Rose Carter was smaller than Arthur had imagined. She wore a light blue hospital gown and had a distant expression, as if she were seeing something no one else could perceive. Her hands, covered in small scars that evidenced years of caring for animals, rested on her lap. "Rose," Dr. Carter said softly, "I've brought some visitors for you." The woman turned her head slowly towards the door. When her eyes met Chloe's, something extraordinary happened. Her face, until then expressionless, completely transformed. Tears began to stream down her cheeks as she extended her arms towards the girl. "My little flower," Rose whispered in a voice hoarse from dehydration and medication. "My little wildflower." Chloe ran into Rose's arms, and the two hugged with an intensity that moved everyone present. It was obvious that the bond between them was genuine and deep. "Aunt Rose, I looked for you for so long," Chloe said, her voice muffled in the older woman's shoulder. "I looked for you too, my dear. Every day, every day." Rose looked over Chloe's head at Arthur, her eyes still moist but now alert and focused. "Are you the man who found my girl?" "Yes. My name is Arthur Vance." "Vance." Rose repeated the surname, frowning as if trying to remember something. "That name. I know that name." Morgana stepped closer. "Rose, I'm Dr. Morgana Shaw. I took care of the animals after the sanctuary was closed. Do you remember me?" "Dr. Morgana? Yes, you came with the other vets when they took my babies away." Rose fidgeted slightly. "Did you take good care of them?" "I did. They were all taken to safe places where they are being well treated. And Luna? Is Luna okay?" Chloe pulled away slightly from Rose's hug. "Luna is in the forest, Aunt Rose. She protected me when Mommy left me on the road and then went to live with other panthers." Rose held Chloe's face between her hands, her eyes shining with a lucidity she hadn't shown in months. "My little one, that woman who took you away. She wasn't your mother." The silence in the room was total. Arthur felt his heart race. "What do you mean?" "Your real mother was Anna Beth, a young girl who brought you to me when you were just a baby. She cried a lot and said she couldn't take care of you, but that she would come back when her life got better." "And did she come back?" Isadora asked. "No, my flower. Anna never appeared again. But the woman who took you last week, she said she was your mother, but I knew she was lying." Morgana leaned forward. "Rose, do you remember what this woman was like?" "Dark hair, light eyes, about the age Anna would be now. She knew things about Chloe that only someone very close would know, but there was something wrong with her, something desperate." "Why did you let her take Chloe?" Arthur asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Rose looked at him with an expression of deep sadness. "Because she said the bad men were coming back. She said they had found out about Chloe and were going to take her away if I didn't hand the child over to her. I was afraid, so afraid." Dr. Carter intervened. "Rose needs to rest now. This conversation is being too intense for her." "No," Rose protested, holding Chloe tighter. "I don't want them to take my girl again." "No one is going to take her, Aunt Rose," Chloe said, stroking the older woman's face. "Uncle Arthur is good. He has nice eyes like you." Rose studied Arthur for long moments, as if assessing his soul. "Vance. Now I remember. Eleanor Vance. The lady who helped our work." Arthur felt as if he had been punched. "You knew my wife. Eleanor used to visit us every month. She brought medicine, food for the animals, and always asked about Chloe. She was very worried about this child." "Why was she specifically worried about Chloe?" Rose looked confused at Dr. Carter, then at Morgana, as if checking if she could continue speaking. Because Eleanor couldn't have her own children. She said that when the time was right, she wanted to adopt Chloe." The revelation hit Arthur like a lightning bolt. Eleanor had never mentioned fertility problems or an interest in adoption. During years of marriage, they had assumed they would eventually have children, but the subject had never been treated with urgency. "That's impossible," he murmured. "Eleanor would have told me." "She was going to tell you," Rose said, her voice growing weaker. "Eleanor said she was going to talk to you about Chloe when the girl turned 4. But then she was gone in that accident." Morgana and Dr. Carter exchanged worried glances. Rose was revealing information that completely changed everyone's understanding of Chloe's situation. "Rose," Morgana said gently, "are you sure Eleanor wanted to adopt Chloe?" "Absolutely sure. She even started the legal paperwork. Beatrice helped with that." Arthur stood up abruptly. "Beatrice? My sister-in-law knew about the adoption plans?" Of course she knew. Beatrice was the one who brought the documents for Eleanor to sign. They were arranging everything for Chloe to come live with you. The room began to spin around Arthur. For 10 years, Beatrice had hidden not only the funding of the sanctuary, but also her sister's plans to adopt a child. And now, when fate had brought that same child into his life, Beatrice was trying to separate them. "Uncle Arthur, are you okay?" Chloe asked, noticing his agitation. He knelt beside the chair where she sat on Rose's lap. "I'm fine, little one. I'm just understanding some things I didn't know before." "Good things." Arthur looked at Rose, who watched the interaction with a faint but genuine smile. "I think so. Things that show you were always meant to be part of my family." At that moment, Dr. Carter indicated that Rose needed to rest. The reunion had been too emotionally intense for a patient in her condition, but before they left, Rose held Arthur's hand. "Take good care of her. Chloe is special. She understands animals in a way few humans can. It's a rare gift." "I'll take care of her as if she were my own daughter," he promised. "She is your daughter," Rose said with surprising conviction. "Eleanor chose you to be her father, and Eleanor always knew how to choose people well." During the drive back home, Chloe fell asleep in the back seat of the truck, exhausted by the emotional intensity of the reunion. Morgana watched Arthur as he drove, noticing the tension in his jaw and the way his hands gripped the steering wheel. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Betrayed," he answered without hesitation. "For 10 years, Beatrice made me believe I knew every aspect of Eleanor's life. And now I discover that my own wife was planning to adopt a child without even consulting me. Maybe she was waiting for the right moment to talk to you. Or maybe she didn't trust me enough to share her plans." When they arrived at the property, they found the house empty. Beatrice had not yet returned from her morning outing, leaving only a note saying she would be back in the late afternoon. Arthur carried a sleeping Chloe to her room, covered her carefully, and went downstairs to face the questions piling up in his mind. The conversation he would have with Beatrice when she returned would change everything. Beatrice returned home late in the afternoon, with an expression Arthur had never seen before. She seemed to have aged years in a single day, her hair disheveled and her eyes red, suggesting she had cried a lot. She carried a small travel bag and a folder of documents that she held against her chest like a protective shield. "We need to talk," she said, before Arthur could even speak, her voice hoarse and tired. "Yes, we do," he replied, pointing to the office. "Chloe is sleeping. It will be better to talk in there." In the office, Beatrice sat in the armchair she usually occupied during family business meetings, but this time her posture was different. There was none of the usual confidence, just a heavy resignation that hung over her like a dark cloud. "Where were you today?" Arthur asked, closing the door behind him. "At the bank, at the notary, and at the cemetery." "The cemetery." Beatrice opened the folder and took out a series of documents yellowed with age. "I went to visit Eleanor, something I hadn't done in months. And while I was there, I decided it was time to tell you the whole truth." Arthur sat behind his desk, creating a physical distance that reflected the emotional distance he felt growing between them. "We visited Rose today. She told me some interesting things." "I imagine so." Beatrice placed the papers on the desk. "These are the original documents for the adoption process Eleanor was arranging for Chloe." Arthur picked up the papers with trembling hands. The first document was an international adoption petition, filled out in Eleanor's careful handwriting. The child's name, Chloe Santos, estimated age at the time, 18 months. The date of the document, 6 months before the accident that had taken his wife's life. She was planning this for that long, he murmured, flipping through the documents. For years, Arthur. Ever since we found out she couldn't get pregnant. Arthur looked up sharply. We found out? I never knew Eleanor had fertility problems. Beatrice took a deep breath, preparing for a confession she had guarded for over a decade. Because she made me promise not to tell you until she was ready. Eleanor found out she had severe endometriosis 2 years after your wedding. The doctor said the probability of her getting pregnant naturally was almost zero. And she decided to hide this from me? She decided to protect you. Eleanor knew you always dreamed of having children. Remember the talks you used to have about building a large family? She didn't want to disappoint you. Arthur got up and walked to the window, watching the garden where Chloe had played earlier. So she decided to adopt without consulting me. Not exactly. Her plan was to introduce you to Chloe, gradually. First, as a child, she was temporarily helping through the foundation. Then, when you got attached to her, she would tell you the truth about her infertility and suggest the formal adoption, an elaborate manipulation. An act of desperate love, Beatrice corrected. Eleanor was terrified of losing you. She thought if you knew she couldn't give you biological children, you would look for another woman. Arthur turned to face his sister-in-law. And you went along with this charade? For all these years, you let me believe Eleanor had hidden her dreams of motherhood because she asked me to, and because, after she was gone, I saw no point in causing more pain by talking about children you would never have. But now Chloe is here. The same child Eleanor wanted to adopt has appeared in my life by chance. And you tried to discourage me from keeping her. Beatrice lowered her head, unable to meet Arthur's accusing gaze. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you would find out the truth and blame me for hiding Eleanor's plans. That you would realize I knew Chloe was your wife's dream child and didn't tell you when she appeared. And you were right to be afraid, Arthur said, his voice cold. Because that's exactly what I'm doing now. Beatrice began to cry silently, tears streaming down her cheeks without her making any move to wipe them away. I know I have no excuse, but for 10 years I took care of you, Arthur. I took care of this house, your business, your life. I became so used to protecting you from more pain that I couldn't see when I was causing more harm. Protecting me or protecting yourself. The accusation hit Beatrice like a slap. What do you mean, for 10 years you were the only important woman in my life? You managed everything, decided everything, were consulted on everything. The arrival of Chloe, and especially the discovery that she was the child Eleanor wanted to adopt, threatened your control over my life. That's not true. I always wanted what was best for you. Then why didn't you tell me about Eleanor's plans as soon as Chloe appeared? Why did you try to convince me to hand her over to the authorities? Beatrice couldn't answer. The truth was too complex, mixing genuine love for Arthur with a possessiveness she hadn't fully recognized until that moment. Where do you plan to go? Arthur asked, noticing the bag she had brought. To Atlanta. I have a sister there who can take me in for a while. I think it's best if I step out of the picture while you and Chloe adapt to the new reality. And the business? The management of the house? I found some candidates to replace me. I left their contacts with the company secretary. Beatrice stood up, composing herself with the pride that had always characterized her. Arthur, I made serious mistakes, but I want you to know that everything I did was because I love you like a brother and wanted to protect you. Protect me from having a family, from realizing the dreams Eleanor and I shared. Protect you from more pain. I couldn't bear to see you suffer again if something went wrong. Arthur watched the woman who had been his constant companion during the most difficult decade of his life. Despite the anger he felt, he couldn't deny that Beatrice had sacrificed to care for him when he needed it most. Beatrice, you don't have to leave forever, but you need time to understand that Chloe is not a threat to our family. She is part of our family. I know that now. But the damage is done. The child deserves to grow up without the presence of someone who initially tried to separate her from you. At that moment, a small voice came from the door. "Uncle Arthur, Aunt Beatrice, why are you talking quietly and sadly?" Chloe was at the office entrance, still sleepy, holding the teddy bear Beatrice had found for her. Her hair was messy, and she wore the pajamas they had bought the day before. Beatrice knelt and opened her arms. "Come here, little one." Chloe ran into the hug, and Beatrice held her with an intensity that revealed her pain. "Chloe, Aunt Beatrice is going on a trip for a while. Why? Don't you like me anymore?" "I like you very much. More than I thought it was possible to like someone in such a short time. But sometimes adults need to go away to think about important things. And when will you be back?" Beatrice looked at Arthur over the child's head. "I don't know, my dear, but I want you to know that Uncle Arthur will take very good care of you. I know. He has nice eyes like Aunt Rose and like you." Chloe's innocence broke Beatrice's heart. The child had included her in the list of people with nice eyes, people worthy of trust, despite all the conflicts she had witnessed. After Chloe went back to her room, Beatrice finished her farewell with Arthur in the entrance hall. The property she had managed for 10 years now seemed strange, as if it no longer belonged to her world. "Arthur, there's one more thing I haven't told you," she said, hesitating at the door. "What?" "The woman who took Chloe from the sanctuary. Rose was right to be suspicious of her. It wasn't the child's biological mother." "How do you know that?" "Because I knew her. It was Annabeth, Chloe's real mother. But it wasn't the Anna who left the baby at the sanctuary. It was an adult, desperate Anna, being pressured by people who had discovered the child's existence." Arthur felt a chill down his spine. "What people?" "People connected to the group investigating the sanctuary's irregularities. Anna was being blackmailed. They told her that if she didn't retrieve Chloe, the entire animal protection network would be exposed in a way that would harm many innocent people. And now? Where is Anna?" "I don't know. After she abandoned Chloe on the road, she disappeared. But Arthur, those people may still be looking for the child. The sanctuary was just one part of a larger scheme." Beatrice's final revelation left Arthur on high alert. Chloe was not just an orphan and traumatized. She could be in real danger. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I wasn't sure. And because I was afraid you'd decide it was too dangerous to keep her." That night, after Beatrice left for Atlanta, Arthur locked all the doors and windows of the house with a care he hadn't had in years. Chloe slept peacefully, unaware of the dangers that might be approaching, while he stood guard in his office chair, watching every shadow that moved in the garden. The family he was building with Chloe would face more challenges than he had imagined, but one thing was clear: he would not allow anything or anyone to take that child from his life again. The days following Beatrice's departure brought a strange sense of freedom, mixed with constant anxiety for Arthur. For the first time in 10 years, he and Chloe were truly alone in the large house, creating their own routines without the intermediation of a third party. The girl seemed to flourish in this new dynamic, showing a genuine joy that contrasted with the caution she maintained when Beatrice was present. "Uncle Arthur, can I make breakfast for us today?" Chloe asked one Thursday morning, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "You know how to cook?" he asked, surprised. "Aunt Rose taught me a few things. She said every child needs to know how to take care of themselves." In the kitchen, Arthur watched, fascinated, as Chloe prepared scrambled eggs with the skill of someone much older. Her movements were precise and careful, revealing practical knowledge that a 4-year-old raised in an urban environment would never have. "Where did you learn to crack eggs like that?" he asked, watching her deftly separate the yolks. The animals at the sanctuary loved eggs. Aunt Rose said eggs are medicine for almost everything, so I always helped in the kitchen. During breakfast, Chloe shared more stories about her life at the sanctuary, revealing details that painted a complex picture of that experience. There was genuine love between her, Rose, and the animals, but also a constant sense of insecurity, as if everyone knew that life couldn't last forever. "Uncle Arthur," she said suddenly, stopping eating, "do you think the bad men can find me here?" The question hit Arthur like a punch. What bad men, little one? The ones who took the animals away and made Aunt Rose cry. Before Mommy Anna took me from there, I heard her talking to Aunt Rose about some men who were looking for me. For you specifically? Yes. They knew my name and knew I lived there. Aunt Rose got very scared. Arthur knelt beside Chloe's chair, holding her small hands. "Chloe, if anyone ever shows up here that you don't know, you run inside the house and call me, okay? Like I did with Luna when strange people showed up at the sanctuary." Exactly. That afternoon, Morgana made an unscheduled visit that brought disturbing news. She arrived accompanied by a man Arthur didn't know, a federal investigator specializing in environmental crimes. "Arthur, this is Detective Richard Miles. He's investigating the network that operated behind the sanctuary where Chloe lived." Detective Miles was a serious, middle-aged man with a posture that conveyed authority without being intimidating. When he saw Chloe playing in the garden, his expression visibly softened. "Mr. Vance, I need to ask you a few questions about how you found the child. The case is proving to be more complex than we initially imagined." In the office, out of Chloe's earshot, the detective revealed information that chilled Arthur's blood. The sanctuary wasn't just an irregular rehabilitation center, it was part of a money laundering operation that used animal donations as a front to move funds of dubious origin. The Eleanor Vance Foundation appears in our records as one of the main donors for the last 5 years, Miles said, consulting his notes. "We're investigating whether your late wife had knowledge of the irregularities." "Eleanor was incapable of getting involved in anything illegal," Arthur replied firmly. "She genuinely loved animals. We believe that. But it's possible she was deceived by people who took advantage of her good faith." Morgana spoke up. "What worries us most is that Chloe may have been a witness to compromising activities. A small child observes everything, and even if she doesn't understand what she sees, she might have valuable information in her memory." "What kind of information?" "Faces, names, conversations. The people involved in the scheme might consider Chloe a threat." Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. "Are you saying she's in real danger?" "We're saying it's a possibility that needs to be taken seriously," the detective replied, "especially considering that Annabeth, the biological mother, disappeared after abandoning the child. And what do you suggest?" "For now, keep Chloe away from public places. Avoid establishing predictable routines. And if you notice any suspicious movement around the property, contact us immediately." After the visitors left, Arthur felt torn between the desire to protect Chloe and the need not to transmit his fears to her. The child had already lived through enough trauma. She didn't need to carry the weight of threats that might never materialize. That night, during dinner, Chloe sensed his tension. "Uncle Arthur, are you worried about something?" "Just thinking about work." He lied. Aunt Rose always said that when adults get worried, it's because they're trying to protect someone they love. The girl's wisdom surprised him once again. "And do you agree with Aunt Rose?" "I do. And I also think we don't need to be afraid when we have good people taking care of us." 3 days later, Arthur's fears materialized in an unexpected way. He had gone out for a quick meeting at the company, leaving Chloe with Jacob, the caretaker, who often helped her with small tasks on the property. When he returned in the late afternoon, he found Jacob visibly nervous. "Mr. Vance, some people showed up here looking for the girl." "What people?" A man and a woman in a black car. They said they were social workers and wanted to talk to Chloe about the place where she used to live. Arthur felt his blood run cold. Where is Chloe now? Hiding in her room. When she saw the car coming, she ran inside the house and said she didn't want to talk to strange people. And did they insist? They insisted a lot. They said they would come back with official documents if I didn't cooperate. But something about them gave me a bad feeling, you know. Arthur ran into the house and found Chloe under the guest room bed, clutching her teddy bear. When she saw him, she came out from her hiding place and threw herself into his arms. "Uncle Arthur, it was the bad men." I recognized the man's voice. He was at the sanctuary the day they took the animals away. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. He has a deep voice and talks fast when he gets nervous." And the woman smelled like Mommy Anna's perfume. Arthur immediately called Detective Miles, who arrived at the property in less than an hour, accompanied by 2 agents. They installed a basic security system and advised Arthur not to leave Chloe alone under any circumstances. "The description she gave of the woman matches Annabeth," Miles said. "It's possible she's being forced to cooperate with the suspects. And now we need to accelerate our investigation before they make another attempt at contact." That night, Chloe slept in Arthur's room on a makeshift bed on the floor. She had insisted she couldn't sleep alone after the afternoon scare, and he didn't have the heart to deny her request. "Uncle Arthur," she whispered in the darkness, "if the bad men take me away, will you look for me?" "Chloe, no one is going to take you away. I promise." "But what if they do?" Arthur knelt beside her little bed, holding her hand. "Then I will search for you to the end of the world, and I'll bring Luna to help me." Chloe smiled in the dark. "Luna would like that. She always liked hunting bad men." "What do you mean?" "At the sanctuary, whenever bad people showed up, Luna would get restless. She knew who was no good just by their smell." An idea began to form in Arthur's mind. "Chloe, do you think you could find Luna again?" "Of course. She's in the big woods, where the creek makes noise." "Why?" "Because maybe it's time to ask an old friend for help." The next morning, against all the security advice he had received, Arthur made a decision that would change the course of the entire situation. He and Chloe were going to look for Luna in the forest. If the people threatening them knew the power of the bond between the child and the panther, maybe it was time to use that connection to their advantage. What he didn't expect was that this decision would lead them directly to the final confrontation with the true culprits behind the sanctuary's destruction and Chloe's traumatic separation from her makeshift family. The decision to look for Luna in the forest was made during breakfast, when Chloe described a disturbing dream she had during the night. In the dream, the panther was injured and calling for her, while unknown men approached the woods with malicious intent. "Uncle Arthur, Luna needs us," she said with a conviction that went beyond her age. "In my dream, she was trying to warn me about something." Arthur knew it was risky to take Chloe outside the safety of the property, but something in the girl's urgent tone convinced him that she might be right. Besides, hiding indefinitely was not a sustainable solution. "If we go look for Luna, you need to promise you'll obey everything I say," he said, checking the shotgun he would carry as a precaution. "I promise, but Uncle Arthur, you don't need the gun." Luna doesn't like the sound of gunshots. Around 10 in the morning, they set out on the trail that led to the dense woods at the back of the property. Chloe walked with surprising confidence, as if her feet knew every stone on the path. Arthur followed her, all his senses on high alert, torn between admiration for the girl's natural connection to the forest and the constant fear that they were being watched. "This is where Luna likes to be," Chloe said when they reached a clearing near the creek she had mentioned. "She chooses places where she can see who's coming, but where there's shade and cool water." They sat on a large rock near the creek bank and waited. The silence of the forest was broken only by the sound of running water and the sporadic songs of birds. Arthur began to question whether this expedition had been a mistake when Chloe suddenly stood up. "She's coming," the girl whispered. staring intently at a specific point in the dense vegetation. Arthur couldn't see anything, but a few seconds later, Luna emerged from the green shadows like a golden ghost. The panther approached slowly, its eyes fixed on Chloe. But there was something different in its behavior. It seemed more tense, more alert than the first time Arthur had encountered it. "Luna, what happened to you?" Chloe asked, extending her hand toward the panther. That's when Arthur saw it. Luna was limping slightly on her right hind leg, and there was a superficial wound on her left flank. Someone had hurt the panther, and recently. "Chloe, stay where you are," he said, noticing the growing agitation in the animal's behavior, but the girl had already approached Luna, examining her wounds carefully. The panther allowed her to touch it, emitting low sounds that seemed like a complex conversation between the two. "Uncle Arthur!" "Someone shot at her," Chloe said, her voice filled with indignation, but she managed to escape. "How do you know that?" "Because she told me, and because I can see the wound the bullet made on her paw." Arthur cautiously approached and could confirm Chloe's assessment. There was a graze wound, consistent with a shot from a hunting rifle. Someone had tried to kill or capture Luna, probably the night before. "Who would do that?" he murmured. "The same people who want to take me away," Chloe answered with disturbing clarity. "They know Luna protects me. That's why they tried to hurt her first." The child's deduction made unsettling sense. If the criminals knew about the connection between Chloe and the panther, eliminating or neutralizing Luna would be a logical strategy to weaken the girl's natural defenses. While Chloe tended to Luna's wounds with a mixture of creek water and medicinal leaves she knew how to identify, Arthur heard a sound that made his blood run cold, the distant noise of engines approaching through the woods. "Chloe, we need to get out of here now," he said urgently. "I can't leave Luna hurt. Luna knows how to take care of herself, but if we stay here, we'll all be in danger." Luna, as if understanding the approaching danger, stood up and gently pushed Chloe toward Arthur with her snout. It was a clear gesture of farewell and protection. "She wants us to go," Chloe translated, tears starting to stream down her face. "She's going to try to distract the bad men so we can escape." "We're not letting her do this alone," Arthur said, making an impulsive decision. "Luna, can you take us to a safe place in the forest?" The panther tilted its head, as if evaluating the proposal. Then it began to move slowly through the woods, limping but determined. Arthur picked Chloe up and followed the panther along a trail he had never seen before, apparently known only to the animals of the region. The sound of the engines grew closer, now accompanied by human voices shouting instructions. There were at least 3 people looking for them in the forest, and they seemed to know the area well. Luna guided them for almost 15 minutes through increasingly dense vegetation, until they reached a rock formation that Arthur didn't know existed on his property. It was a small, natural cave, hidden behind a curtain of vines and foliage. "Luna knows all the hiding spots in the forest," Chloe explained, as they settled into the cool interior of the cave. "She brought me here a few times when I was smaller. From their hiding spot, they could hear the pursuers' voices getting closer." Arthur recognized one of them. It was the voice Chloe had identified the day before, when the fake social workers appeared at his house. "She has to be around here," the man was saying. "The tracking system shows they entered the woods in this direction." Tracking system. Arthur whispered to himself, how are they being tracked? Chloe tugged on his sleeve and pointed to the small backpack he was carrying. To his horror, Arthur realized there must be a tracking device hidden among the belongings they had brought into the forest. Quickly, he emptied the backpack and found a small metal object stuck to the inside. A professional GPS tracker, probably placed there during the visit from the fake social workers. "Uncle Arthur, can you break it?" Chloe asked. "I can, but they'll know we found out. It would be better to—" "Give it to Luna to take far away," Chloe completed, reaching the same conclusion he had. Luna was lying at the entrance of the cave, watching the forest. When Arthur approached with the tracking device, the panther seemed to understand immediately what he wanted. It gently took the object between its teeth and disappeared silently into the woods. 20 minutes later, they heard shouts of frustration coming from a completely opposite direction to their location. Luna had taken the tracker far away, confusing the pursuers. "We lost them," a female voice, which Chloe immediately identified, shouted. "It's Mommy Anna," she whispered, her voice a mix of joy and sadness. "She's with the bad men, but not because she wants to be." "How do you know that?" "Because her voice is different. It's scared. Aunt Rose taught me to listen when people are talking because they're forced to." For the next hour, hidden in the cave, they heard the criminals unsuccessfully searching the forest. Gradually, the voices faded until the woods returned to their natural silence. "They're gone," Chloe said, but something in her expression indicated she knew the danger wasn't completely over. "How can we be sure?" "Because Luna came back." The panther had indeed returned, moving more easily now that her wounds had been treated. She approached Chloe and emitted a series of low sounds that the girl seemed to understand perfectly. "She says, the bad men are gone, but they'll be back with more people," Chloe translated. "And that this time, they'll surround the whole property." Arthur felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. They couldn't go back home, it would be too dangerous. But they also couldn't stay in the forest indefinitely, especially with a 4-year-old child. "Can Luna lead us to a place where we can get help?" he asked, feeling ridiculous for entrusting their safety to a wild animal. The panther looked at Chloe, who nodded as if confirming something. Then Luna stood up and began to move in the opposite direction of his property, heading deeper into the virgin forest. "She's taking us to the old road on the other side of the forest," Chloe explained. "From there, we can call the police without the bad men seeing us." As they followed Luna through the ever denser forest, Arthur couldn't help but be impressed by the animal's intelligence and loyalty. The panther had not only protected Chloe since her abandonment at the sanctuary, but was now risking its own safety to keep them safe. What he didn't expect was that the old road Luna was leading them to would be exactly where they would find the final answers to the entire conspiracy surrounding Chloe's life, and where they would discover the true identity of the criminals who had destroyed the sanctuary and separated so many unlikely families like theirs. The trail Luna chose to lead them to the old road was longer and more winding than Arthur had anticipated. After 2 hours of walking through the dense woods, carrying Chloe through the most difficult stretches, they finally spotted the cracked asphalt of an abandoned highway that cut through the forest. "This is where the sanctuary trucks used to come to get supplies," Chloe said, immediately recognizing the place. "Aunt Rose used to say this road was a secret, that few people knew it existed." Arthur examined the deteriorated highway, covered in weeds in several places. It really looked like it had been abandoned for years, but there were recent signs of use, tire marks in the dry mud and some discarded food wrappers on the shoulder. Luna positioned herself at the edge of the woods, clearly uncomfortable with the open environment of the road. The panther emitted a few low sounds to Chloe, who translated with a worried expression. "She says this place isn't safe right now. That many bad people have passed through here in the last few days. But it's our only chance to get out of this forest and get help," Arthur said, pulling his phone from his pocket. To his frustration, there was no signal in this isolated area. It was then that they heard the sound of an engine approaching on the old road. Arthur picked Chloe up and hid behind a large tree while Luna disappeared silently into the dense vegetation. The vehicle that appeared was not what Arthur had expected. It was an old pickup truck, driven by a white-haired man who looked to be over 70. The driver stopped the car exactly where they were hiding and got out slowly. "You can come out now," the man said in a tired but gentle voice. "I saw you hiding, and if you're running from the people I think you are, then we're allies." Arthur hesitated, but Chloe whispered something that made him change his mind. He smells like Uncle Charles, who brought food for the sanctuary. Stepping out of hiding carefully, Arthur kept Chloe close as he examined the stranger. He had the look of a retired farmer, simple clothes and calloused hands that suggested a life of honest work. "My name is Charles Dawson," the man said, extending his hand, "and I imagine you're Arthur Vance and this little one is Chloe." "How do you know us?" Arthur asked, still suspicious. "Because I've been looking for you for 3 days. Rose Carter called me from the hospital and said Chloe was in danger." "Uncle Charles!" Chloe exclaimed, letting go of Arthur and running towards the man. "You disappeared after the bad men arrived." Charles knelt and hugged the girl with evident emotion. "Sorry for disappearing, little sprout. I had to hide because I found out some very bad things about the people who shut down our sanctuary." "What kind of things?" Arthur asked, stepping closer. "The sanctuary was just a front. The people pretending to protect animals were actually using the place to hide much worse activities." Charles explained that he had been the official supplier of feed and medicine for the sanctuary for 5 years. At first, he genuinely believed he was helping a conservation project, but in the last few months before it was shut down, he began to notice strange irregularities. People would arrive in the dead of night, bringing animals that weren't native to the region, and these animals would disappear quickly, without explanation. Rose always said they were transfers to other sanctuaries, but something didn't add up. "What kind of animals?" Arthur asked. "Rare felines mostly, panthers from other regions, ocelots, even some felines that don't exist in the US. Chloe tugged on Charles's shirt. "Uncle Charles, do you know where Mommy Anna is?" The man's face darkened. "Anna is alive, but she's not free to choose what she does. The people controlling this operation are using her to get to you." "Why?" "Chloe is just a child," Arthur protested, "because she saw and heard things that could incriminate very powerful people, and especially because she has a unique connection with the animals they used in their illegal activities." Charles recounted that he had spent the last 6 months investigating the criminal network behind the sanctuary on his own. He discovered it was an international wildlife trafficking scheme, disguised as conservation projects. The Eleanor Vance Foundation wasn't the only legitimate funding source being deceived, he explained. They raised funds from well-intentioned people and used the money to finance the illegal capture and sale of rare animals. "And Chloe is a threat because she can identify the animals and the people involved?" Arthur asked. "Exactly. Plus, she has a rare ability to communicate with wild felines. For criminals dealing with dangerous animals, a child with that gift would be extremely valuable." The explanation made Arthur feel nauseous. Not only had Chloe been separated from her makeshift family, but there were people who wanted to exploit her for her natural abilities. "What can we do?" he asked. "First, we need to get out of this region. I have a small farm in the Blue Ridge Highlands where you can stay safe while I arrange contact with the right federal authorities." Chloe looked toward the woods where Luna had disappeared. "And Luna? I can't abandon her again." "Luna will be fine," Charles said gently. "In fact, she's probably safer in the woods than any of us." At that moment, as if to confirm Charles's words, Luna emerged from the vegetation and approached the group. The panther walked up to Chloe and touched its snout to the girl's face, emitting low sounds that seemed like an affectionate farewell. "She's saying goodbye," Chloe translated, tears streaming down her face. "And that she'll take care of the forest until I come back to visit her." "How do you know you'll be back?" Arthur asked. "Because now I have you to take care of me, and you already promised we'll always visit Luna." On the way to Charles's farm in the Blue Ridge Highlands, Chloe fell asleep in the back of the truck, exhausted from the day's adventures. Charles took the opportunity to tell Arthur more details about the criminal operation they had uncovered. The leader of the scheme is a man named Vincent Cross. He presents himself as an environmentalist, has contacts in various conservation organizations, but he actually coordinates a trafficking network that spans all of South America. And Annabeth, how did she get involved? Anna was never a willing participant. When she left Chloe at the sanctuary as a baby, she was fleeing a violent relationship. Rose took care of the child for years, but when the scheme started to unravel, Cross found out about Chloe and her abilities. So he forced Anna to retrieve her daughter. He threatened to hurt Chloe if Anna didn't cooperate. That's why she took the girl from the sanctuary, but she couldn't bring herself to hand her over to the criminals. She abandoned Chloe on the road, hoping someone decent would find her. Arthur absorbed the information, feeling a mixture of anger and admiration for the woman who had given life to Chloe. Even under threat, Anna had found a way to protect her daughter. Charles, do you think Vincent Cross will give up looking for Chloe? No. Men like him don't give up easily. But now that we know who our enemies are, we can prepare better. When they arrived at Charles's farm, a simple but well-kept property nestled in the mountains of the Blue Ridge Highlands, the sun was already setting. Arthur gently woke Chloe, and she looked around with curiosity. "This place is pretty," she said, observing the rocky mountains that surrounded the property. "It reminds me a little of the sanctuary, but without the sadness." In Charles's house, they found a surprise that made Chloe radiant with joy. In the living room, in a large but comfortable cage, was a panther cub, approximately 3 months old. "This is Jax," Charles introduced. "His mother was hit by a car on the highway 2 months ago. I'm taking care of him until I can find a suitable place for an orphan feline." Chloe approached the cage carefully, and the cub immediately took an interest in her, emitting small mews that she seemed to understand perfectly. "He wants to know if I'm friends with Luna," she said, smiling for the first time since they had left the forest. "And are you?" Charles asked. "I am, and he can be my friend too if he wants." That night, while Chloe played with Jax under Charles's supervision, Arthur finally managed to get in touch with Detective Miles by phone. The ensuing conversation brought both relief and new worries about the future of his unlikely family. The phone call with Detective Miles brought news Arthur did not expect. The FBI had managed to locate Vincent Cross and part of his criminal network, but the operation to capture them had revealed a disturbing connection to people close to Arthur's life. "Mr. Vance, I need you to prepare for a difficult revelation," Miles said over the phone line. "Beatrice Moore has been under investigation for 6 months as a possible facilitator of the money laundering scheme." Arthur felt as if the floor had vanished from beneath him. That's impossible. Beatrice may have made errors in judgment, but she would never knowingly get involved with criminals. The evidence suggests she wasn't acting consciously, at least not initially. Vincent Cross approached her posing as a legitimate environmental consultant, offering ways to optimize the donations from the Eleanor Vance Foundation. Charles, who was listening to the conversation, gestured for Arthur to check that Chloe wasn't nearby. The girl was engrossed in playing with Jax on the terrace, out of earshot of the adults' conversation. "What exactly did Beatrice do?" Arthur asked, dreading the answer. She provided detailed information about the Foundation's donations, including dates, amounts, and recipients. She also facilitated increases in the transfer amounts, believing she was helping more animals. And when did she find out she was being deceived? From the records we found, it seems she became suspicious about 3 months ago. Coincidentally, that's when she stopped responding to Cross's requests and tried to cut contact with him. The timeline made unsettling sense. 3 months ago coincided with the period when Beatrice had begun to show increasing nervousness and insist that Arthur avoid getting involved in dubious philanthropic projects. "Detective, where is Beatrice now? Is she still in danger? We're trying to locate her. According to our records, she left Atlanta 2 days ago and hasn't been seen since." Arthur hung up the phone with a growing sense of guilt and worry. He had thrown Beatrice out of the house at the moment she most needed protection, and now she had disappeared, possibly into the hands of the criminals she had unwittingly helped. "Arthur," Charles said, noticing his distress, "you couldn't have known, and even if you did, Beatrice made her own choices. But she's family. The only family I had left, besides Chloe." At that moment, Chloe entered the room carrying Jax in her arms. The panther cub seemed completely comfortable with her, purring softly as she stroked its golden fur. "Uncle Arthur, Jax wants to know when he can meet Luna," she said matter-of-factly. "He feels lonely without other felines around." "Chloe, cubs like Jax need to learn to hunt and defend themselves before living in the forest," Charles explained. "If he meets Luna now, it could be dangerous for him." "I know, but he doesn't want to live in the forest yet. He wants a human family too, like I had with Aunt Rose." The simplicity of Chloe's observation deeply touched both men. Both she and the panther cub were orphans in search of a surrogate family that could offer love and protection. "Chloe," Arthur said, kneeling to be at her level, "if we could create a place where you, me, Jax, and other orphan animals could live together, would you like that?" The girl's eyes lit up, like a new sanctuary. "But a real sanctuary with no lies." "Exactly. A place where injured animals could be cared for, where you could use your gift to help them, and where no one would ever lie again about what we're doing." Charles smiled, understanding the direction of Arthur's thoughts. "Are you thinking of turning your property into a licensed sanctuary? I'm thinking of honoring Eleanor's true wishes. She wanted to help animals, and she wanted to adopt Chloe. Maybe we can do both at the same time." The next day, they received an unexpected visit that completely changed the course of the situation. Morgana arrived at Charles's farm accompanied by a woman Chloe recognized immediately. "Mommy Anna!" the girl shouted, running towards the dark-haired woman who knelt to receive her. Anna Beth Santos was visibly thin and gaunt, with deep dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and much suffering. But when she hugged Chloe, her face transformed with a joy she hadn't shown in a long time. "My little one, are you okay? Are you safe?" Anna asked, examining every detail of her daughter's face. "I'm fine, Mommy. Uncle Arthur took very good care of me, and Luna protected me in the forest too." Anna looked at Arthur with a gratitude she couldn't express in words. "Mr. Vance, I don't know how to thank you. When I saw my daughter on that road, it was the hardest decision of my life." "You did what any brave mother would do," he replied. "You protected your daughter the only way you could." Morgana explained that Anna had been found by the FBI in a safe house in Knoxville, where Vincent Cross had been holding her under constant threat. The operation that resulted in Cross's arrest had also freed Anna and several other people who were being coerced. "And now?" Arthur asked. "Anna has legal rights to Chloe." "I do," Anna confirmed, "but I'm in no condition to raise a child alone. I lost my job months ago. I don't have my own home, and I'm still dealing with the trauma of what I've been through." "Mommy," Chloe said, holding Anna's hands, "you can come live with us. Uncle Arthur has a big house, and we're going to create a new sanctuary to take care of orphan animals like Jax." The child's proposal created a reflective silence among the adults. It was a solution no one had considered, but one that made sense for everyone involved. "Anna," Arthur said carefully, "if you want, we can find a way to be a family together. You as Chloe's mother, me as her adoptive father, and all of us as an unconventional family. You would do that. Share your life with a complete stranger just because of a child." "It's not just because of Chloe," Arthur answered honestly. "It's because I've learned that family isn't about blood or conventions. It's about love, protection, and mutual choice." That afternoon, while Anna rested and Chloe introduced Jax to her biological mother, Arthur and Morgana walked the grounds of Charles's farm, discussing the feasibility of creating a licensed sanctuary. You have the financial resources, business experience, and now a child with exceptional natural abilities with animals, Morgana observed. With the right licenses and proper technical support, you could create something truly special. And you? Would you be willing to help as the project's official veterinarian? Morgana smiled. Arthur, to work with you again, seeing the person you've become, would be a privilege. In the farmhouse kitchen, Anna helped Chloe prepare food for Jax, watching in amazement as her daughter interacted with the panther cub. Was she always like this with animals? Anna asked Charles. Always. Since she was a baby, when you brought her to the sanctuary, she showed a natural connection with felines. Rose used to say Chloe had a gift. And you think it's safe? A child living so close to wild predators. With the proper care and professional supervision, I think it's more than safe. It's necessary. Chloe can learn things about conservation and animal behavior that no university could teach. That night, gathered on the farmhouse porch under a starry North Carolina sky, the makeshift family made decisions that would change all of their lives. Anna accepted Arthur's proposal for them to live together as an adoptive family, with her retaining legal custody of Chloe, but sharing all parental responsibilities. "Uncle Arthur," Chloe said, falling asleep in his lap while Jack slept at his feet. "Do you think Aunt Beatrice can come live with us too when the police find her, if she wants to, and if she's willing to be part of a very crazy family full of animals?" he replied, kissing the girl's forehead. "It's going to be the best family in the world," Chloe murmured, closing her eyes. Looking at Anna, who was watching her daughter with silent tears of relief, Arthur knew he had finally found the purpose Eleanor had dreamed of for them. A family built on love, dedicated to protecting the most vulnerable, whether children or orphan animals. 6 months after the reunion in the Blue Ridge Highlands, Arthur's property had been completely transformed. What was once a silent and melancholic house now pulsed with life and purpose. The Eleanor Vance Sanctuary had been officially licensed by the FWS, becoming the first family-run wild feline rehabilitation center in the region. The transformation began with the construction of large, natural enclosures for the injured animals that arrived constantly. Morgana had moved to the property, taking on the role of head veterinarian, while Anna had found her calling as an educational coordinator, developing environmental awareness programs for local schools. "Uncle Arthur, Hope is ready to go back to the forest," Chloe announced on a sunny September morning, referring to a female ocelot they had cared for 4 months after she was found with a broken hind leg. At 5 years old, Chloe had become a natural intermediary between the veterinarians and the sanctuary's felines. Her ability to interpret the animal's behavior had evolved surprisingly, allowing the team to make more accurate decisions about treatments and reintroductions into the wild. "How do you know she's ready?" Arthur asked, watching the girl carefully examine the ocelot's movements. "Because she doesn't look at me anymore when I get close to the fence. Before, she always watched me because she was scared or wanted attention. Now she only looks at the forest." The accuracy of Chloe's observation impressed Morgana, who had arrived to conduct her final veterinary assessment of Hope. "She's right," the veterinarian confirmed after examining the animal. "Hope has fully recovered her mobility and is demonstrating normal wild behaviors." The release was scheduled for that same afternoon in the preserved forest area at the back of the property. It was always a special moment for the whole family, but especially for Chloe, who saw each animal reintegrated into nature as a small personal victory. During lunch, Anna brought news she had been waiting for weeks. "Arthur, I got the call from the lawyer. The adoption papers have been approved by the judge. The formalization of Chloe's adoption by Arthur had been a long process, involving psychological evaluations, social worker visits, and a lot of paperwork. But finally, legally, Chloe would officially be his daughter, with Anna remaining as a co-guardian in an unconventional family arrangement that had worked perfectly for everyone. "Does that mean you're my real daddy on paper now too?" Chloe asked, climbing into Arthur's lap. "It means our family is complete and protected by law," he replied, moved. The moment was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of a familiar car. Beatrice had returned. Arthur's sister-in-law got out of the vehicle slowly, visibly nervous. She had lost weight during her months of absence, and her hair was grayer, but her eyes retained their characteristic determination. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, hesitating at the property entrance. Chloe was the first to approach. "Aunt Beatrice, you're back. Do you want to meet all our new animals?" The girl's warm reception melted the initial tension. Beatrice knelt to hug Chloe, tears streaming down her face. "Little one, can you forgive me for trying to separate you from Uncle Arthur? You didn't know we were a real family," Chloe replied with the simple wisdom that had always characterized her. "But now you know, and families always forgive." During the afternoon, while they watched Hope's release into the forest, Beatrice told them about the months she had spent in hiding, helping the FBI completely dismantle Vincent Cross's network. Her testimony had been crucial in incriminating several people who had taken advantage of legitimate charitable organizations. "Arthur, I know I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did," she said, watching Chloe interact with Jax, who was now 9 months old and had become her constant companion. "But I want you to know that these were the loneliest months of my life. Beatrice, you're family. You made mistakes, but we all do. The question is whether you're willing to start over." "What do you mean?" "We're in need of someone to manage the sanctuary's finances. Someone who knows very well how donations and charitable foundations work." Arthur's proposal surprised Beatrice. "You would trust me again?" "I would. But this time, no secrets. Everything transparent, everything discussed as a family." That night, gathered on the main house's terrace, the expanded family celebrated multiple occasions: Chloe's official adoption, Beatrice's return, and the first anniversary of the Eleanor Vance Sanctuary. "Can I make a little toast?" Chloe asked, raising her glass of passion fruit juice. "Of course, little one," Anna said, smiling at her daughter, who had become a secure and happy child. "I want to toast to all the families that choose each other," Chloe said solemnly. "The families of people, like us, and the families of animals, like Luna and her cubs in the forest, and the mixed-up families, like me and Jax." "Mixed-up families?" Morgana asked, intrigued. "Families where there are people and animals together, and everyone loves each other just the same." As everyone toasted the 5-year-old's wisdom, Arthur reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a detour on a rural road. He had lost Eleanor 10 years ago, but had found a way to honor her dreams in a way she could never have imagined. The sanctuary now housed 15 felines in various stages of rehabilitation, received educational visits from hundreds of students each month, and had become a benchmark for wildlife reintroduction. Most importantly, it had become a true home for a family that had proven that love knows no conventions. "Uncle Arthur," Chloe said as they were getting ready for bed, "do you think Aunt Eleanor would be happy with our family?" "I'm sure of it," he replied, thinking of the wife who had secretly planned to adopt this very child years before. "I think she always knew you would find your way to us." "How did she know?" "Because people with good hearts always find other people with good hearts. It's a law of nature, like the law that makes you understand felines." Chloe smiled and snuggled into her bed, beside which Jack slept on a large cushion made especially for him. From her room, you could see the lights of the sanctuary and hear the soft sounds of nocturnal animals. "Uncle Arthur?" "Yes?" "Tomorrow, can we visit Luna?" I want to introduce Jax to her before he gets too big. We can, he promised, knowing that Luna continued to live in the nearby forest, occasionally being spotted at the edges of the property as if keeping watch over her former charge. On the porch, Anna and Beatrice talked while watching the stars. Two women who had come to the family in completely different ways, but who now shared the same love for that special child. Anna, Beatrice said, "Thank you for accepting me back." "Thank you for taking care of Arthur when he needed it most," Anna replied. "Chloe taught me that family is about adding, not replacing." That night, the large house at the Orchid Estate was complete for the first time since Eleanor's departure. There was laughter echoing through the corridors, animals sleeping safely in the outdoor enclosures, and plans being made for a future that included all kinds of love and protection. Arthur fell asleep, thinking he had finally understood the true meaning of the phrase Chloe had been repeating since she was little. People with nice eyes don't hurt children or animals. They build homes where both can flourish. The Eleanor Vance Sanctuary was not just a rehabilitation center. It was the materialization of a family dream that had traversed life and loss, to be realized in the most beautiful and unexpected way possible. Through the love that multiplies when it is shared generously with all beings who need protection and affection. And somewhere in the nearby forest, Luna rested, knowing that her little charge had found the perfect family, a family that understood that true love knows no species, conventions, or limitations. It just grows infinitely when it finds hearts willing to welcome. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.